set out to do, and I hope you will interrupt with your questions, with your comments. The course for many years was ambulatory care and had a record, as was explained to me here, of declining enrollment, which finally reached zero, within the school. And this was obviously less a reflection of the quality of the instructor than of the developments in curriculum, which had emphasized certain areas of core curriculum, much less selectivity, much less alternatives and options, things that you can correct me on if they've misinformed me, you follow me, in terms of those developments. In other words, financial management became a very important core curriculum area, health, law. These were over recent years, and they in turn told a number of courses. A person interested in aging had to take it, rather as an optional thing, this kind of thing. Ambulatory care areas were more difficult to take, and there were lesser numbers of them. If that's not your impression, as graduate students in health administration, others of you are over here and observing, like I am, I guess, on a bigger scale, what's going on over here. But it does appear like the core curriculum eats up a very large portion and leaves very much less opportunity for people to take up areas they regard as the most thoughtful or the most futuristic, or what they want to do with things. On the other hand, I think some of them take the opportunity of going into other graduate departments. For whatever reasons, that had occurred. And the changes I made are obviously mostly style. I think we've covered the territory, but I haven't done it in the organized academic way of using a textbook, which has always been used. To that extent, I tried to comply with the early remarks that some of you made, and I checked the prices. The cost of, say, using Romer, the very best and the very latest of the texts would have been in the 20-something plus area. I forget what, $25 area. As I got my readings together and priced them at Copytron and elsewhere, they would have run over $20. So what I ended up doing was scrounging, but at least we did without a textbook course. Cost to you. We may have, cost you otherwise. I tried to scrounge out of them sometimes and excerpt here, enough textual material, but most of that stayed with a great deal of current stuff. There are several things we could have anticipated, and you now, in retrospect, can maybe share. One was that it would overlap. The course of necessity would overlap with some other aspects of things you did. If you took the course in health policy and administration, you took the course in health financing and organization in the American healthcare system, it's bound to have had ambulatory care, portions. It's bound to have dealt in part, with group practice or, HMOs. It would overlap. That is unavoidable, and some repetition. Phil Murray, who was an old coal miner in labor organizing, used to say that in the old days of mules in the mines, that you had to hit a mule across the head with a 2x4 to get his attention before you could move. Sometimes I think in education, the name of the game is to sort of say something important to you, 5 times in 5 different courses, and hopefully some pick it up the first time, and get it 4 more times, and some don't hear it till the 5th time because it doesn't suit their experience or their direction or whatever. For whatever reasons, that's not intentional. It's that this course of this focus could not afford to not deal with those aspects. And I may have not pleased everybody due to my own weaknesses of background or of reading equal to your own in certain areas in all aspects of ambulatory care. I tried to deal, all the way to home health and, with a lot of areas and define it broadly. But whether that was achieved or not, we ought to. And I'm not now talking about evaluation, that's your freedom with me gone, to do anything you want to. I'm talking about in terms of a discussion, because the question was asked, would I teach it again next year? Then, my learning experience, aside from evaluation, is whether in discussion and back and forth, what ways, would some of you do it differently, If some of the course overlapped with material you covered, and we can anticipate it, then all of it reflected my experience. You've got to understand that unlike, say, the rest of the faculty, I was without academic background. I am without training in behavioral sciences. I'm without training in matrix management or all the other words that they use in management nowadays, okay? Without accounting background, okay, of any sort, without fiscal management, course background, without sociology, without psychology. That what you had was a jackleg situation, and some of you may say that's reflected in the jackleg nature of the course. That's your, you may want to see that, or what it was a reflection of what had happened to me in 25 years of running group practices and ambulatory care at a variety of levels and dealing with a lot of aspects of it. I don't think anybody that knew the places I'd been, knew the places I'd consulted, didn't think they were a broad, a collection of things. So they were very practical kinds of review for you of problems, experiences, contradictions, dilemmas, of responsibility when you're administrating in this area. That's what I tried to focus on. In other words, that they're not easy areas, to come up with answers in. Some things I talked with you about were plainly nitty-gritty. Okay, no great theory, no great principled aspects, value judgments. They were just, quickie ways to see things or to get to the bottom line or so forth. And if you pick them up, you've got them. If they help you, fine. You'll get out, and you not only may have gotten this during your field experience in part, if you were around someone like that, but you'll get it on the job, or you've already gotten it on the job. But a great deal of it, hopefully, were value matters that'll affect decision-making, conflicts you'll face, confrontations you'll be thrown into, even if you're not a confrontationist by nature. This is the way the world works. Sometimes, as I was an infantryman in World War II, the amazing thing would be to see a kid who was nothing but a beer-drinking guzzler with no idea. He couldn't have cared less whether Hitler took the world or didn't in 42. And suddenly, under combat conditions, well, let's go get those bastards. And he went out and did more than all the, guys were talking against Nazism and all, to knock out a machine gun nest, okay? It's like you may look like the softest part of the team in a hospital you're working in or an institution you're working in, so somebody tries to bang you on the head, and what they discover is you got some, they bumped into something, okay? And you get your education that way. You're not a confrontationist, but it's been forced on you. Generally, I was dealing with what management must deal with. And one further thing, the opposite side of what I said earlier, if the ambulatory part might have been covered to other people differently, if you'd encountered it, a lot of the value stuff, the decisional stuff, the issue stuff that I was raising had to do with issues you'll face whether you go to a nursing home, a hospital, a home, wherever you go. In my opinion, it implies way more than group practice, way more than other kinds of things. And again, here, your own judgments are my concentration was always ambulatory care. Now, if, again, it began with overlapping ambulatory care material, but all of it reflecting secondarily this experience in group practice and ambulatory care. That was the central part of what he did. Then I must add that I did something that may not be done in most of the courses here, but that I do in the med school courses, and I do over the objections of my own chairman over there, who believes that bringing in an outside speaker is bringing in prejudice, bringing in their own views. You know, they're not objective, like the faculty's all somehow up on the fence and objective, or that taking people out doesn't do anything because the school is the place for education, okay? So I violated what he and I have debated, but I still continue to do, which is, let me just review for you quickly. I turned over 4 entire sessions. In all cases, I was trying to bring in experts, so you have to judge the quality of what I was doing, you know, amongst the varieties of things and people that could have been brought in. All of HMO administration was done, if you remember, with one person on group practice and one on ITA, sort of small town, but you got some sense of the negotiation flavor, of the strategic flavor of for real, you know, or going into these places. All of the federal era was handled by John Hatch and Don Madison, who had lived through it in, you know, either Mississippi or Martin Luther King, etc. All of the rural health care layout was done by someone that even if you spent, I think he told me, the last 8 or 10 years here in any kinds of courses, when rural health care was the in thing and all, he just didn't come here to lecture, okay, School of Public Health, but it was like calling up old IOUs on these guys. You know, you go down and do something for them when they ask you to go to one of their little towns, and they came into the school, and maybe you got something out of it. North Carolina has a superb program in rural health care, and you might have got a sense of that out of the team that came. And lastly, one entire session was spent us going out, which was last week, to see a primary care team, you know, in action. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then there were 1-hour sessions, you remember. Ones I can remember was a Medicaid, you know, regulatory agency, a Medicaid administrator for 1 hour. Another was a 1 hour by an academic expert on municipal bond financing, and by implication, the whole use of taxpayer funds or of profit, you know, implications for profit making into the whole healthcare field. So, a very significant portion of the course. Again, I don't know that I would do all of it the same way, you know. Some of the people that accept the idea of bringing it in think that, you know, maybe a little less of it would still get it all done. Like the trip out might be great, the rural health care team coming in, but some of the rest might. But those are your own opinions, and I'd welcome them. Okay, that is a background, sort of picking up with what I tried to tell you in the first session was likely to be, that you'd be dealing with a person who's out there in practice but not as well read as you if you're current from where each of you are now, okay? You're up on the literature, you've just taken courses. And I in no way am associating with a faculty who's either teaching that, nor are they audited them, nor are they taking them, nor do I have the credentials, okay, of a master's level or a PhD or any of these kinds of things. And for the sake of the JD back then, nor do I have in any way you know, anything to do with law since I finished in law, okay? So that you don't have to read into that I'm as turned off on lawyers as I am on doctors, because that would be an implication that you'd have to find out in the law school seminar, okay? But what I wanted to talk with you about is a few issues, bits and pieces, and then I'll be done. But some of them I think are important. Some of them are close to areas we've covered, and I wanted to cover them with you And all things being equal, following that trip, if everything else worked out, I might have tried to get in the mail to get some readings. Instead, I want to do it in this lecture form and discussion form with you. First, before I start on 5 or 6 of these issues, which affect in summary form some of what we've studied, would anyone care to criticize or comment on the, in retrospect, what we were doing? Any reactions to it?
Well, I think there's a lot to say about it. But I loved last week. I thought that was just wonderful. I wish more people had gone. I wish more people in the department had gone. Outside the department, I learned more from that administrator, I think, than I learned in the course about administration. I thought it was a real idealistic setting. I don't know what it would be like to go to other settings. It seemed like everything was so wonderful about everything going out there, which was very interesting. It was nice to see all the positive aspects, and I really felt like I learned a lot.
I think it's worth a few minutes discussion on the point that you just raised. Let's take last week. To me, it is a sad thing that, for instance, I bring Joe Berry in as a lecturer in the med school course, okay? He's occasionally brought in for the entire med school lecture. And you saw very little of him, really, relative to what you saw there. Both Bill Remus and Joe Berry will be down in Raleigh starting Wednesday night until Friday with all National Health Service Corps doctors from North Carolina being brought in. There are people that are used in a host of national, and regional ways. But you focused on something that I think is very important. You were looking at an ideal world, and you have to see that. I don't know whether some of you want to disagree, but I don't mean it was a never land. It was there and it was for real. But the numbers of those kinds of practices, which means non-profit, highly idealistic, firmly in place and ingrained in the community and responsive to the community, and with startlingly good leadership. It could make it if they chose to in Toronto or Houston or San Francisco, but choose to stay in a county of, 8,000 people or something in a terribly rural environment is a terribly unusual thing. And this is one of the areas they think of me as expert in, so they ask me to see a lot of these occasionally nationally. I can tell you that this is not typical in any way of anything even out on the rural countryside. There's maybe a dozen of these, in the U.S. So what you're looking at, and you have to understand, is something so far above the norm that what you said is true, and if you accept it that way, that it's worth anything to see it one time, and really a school of public health, I have very strong views on this. A school of medicine that doesn't, they would take them in series right out there that would graduate anybody without having seen it, or they just, close up shop. The first university 600-800 years ago in Bologna, in northern Italy that began the whole university complex. It means they haven't understood anything, And they might as well still be teaching Latin if they don't let them for once see something like what you saw there, The kinds of answers that, how do you bring a Jane McCaleb into the room? She hasn't heard anyone else speak, she'd speak. You can just tell that everybody's gelled and hasn't even heard each other talk, and that's so unusual. And my only warning to you is, And don't imagine any of you going out to be into a Bill Remus situation, you know. That's my non-cynical but actual statistical warning to you. There are so few of these, you know, around the U.S. There's one like it in Utah. There's one. No, they're just, you know, I can begin to reel off and I might come up. I'd have to knock out of it a lot of others because they have other aspects to them. They're just as sweet. I could name 3 more places, but the doctor's loaf. That's not very many. You see, I mean, there's some other places where there's just not, or I can think of 4 more, 5 more that I know intimately, but the administrator has not got the overview that Bill Remus had. They're sweet. But one of the administrators is a proponent of sliding fee scales, which Bill Remus would take apart with a knife, with a surgical knife, you know. How phony it is, how little it has to do with reality. You know, what the devil do you mean sitting there playing games, asking people? You know, do you own a car, do you own a house, you know, how much cash? You see me going through a whole routine because he's understood as I have, that the people who know how to beat that game give you the answers you want. They've learned them ahead of time. And they learned how to beat social workers a long time ago, and they're mostly around this town well-to-do families' children, you know. They know exactly what answers to give the food stamp people. And it's the proud, working poor that get socked under that sliding fee schedule, because they will not answer, you know, prideful questions, you know, that way, and therefore they pay the full fee, you see. And what I'm trying to say is everything would be just as sweet. I could take you to a few other places. The doctors would be just as sweet, but then you got a naive administrator on a couple. And how more fundamental issue is there than that? See, Bill Remus wouldn't touch it. Wouldn't 10-foot pole. He prefers an ad hoc, you know, method of dealing with, you know, that the receptionists know. And if they don't know, then he better, you know, make the judgment and call the shot and go down with it if he has to. That they act like they're poor, but they got enough money to pay if they know it. You know, if they live up the hollow from them, or they live down, you know, the road, and they can raise their $12 fee to the poor. You know what I mean? They make an ad hoc judgment in a rural community, and he finds it a devil of a lot better. We're not arguing now with people, you know, who have to deal with this in an inner city. What other observations from some of you that were there, though? That's one. Were you all equally impressed, or did you... they were talking about a lot of things that you won't find, like most Jane McCalebs will not deliver any babies unless there's at least one more, 2 more persons in the practice that will take OB. That's very unusual, and the reason for that is she's got someone she believes will back her up in town that is semi-related to the practice. But in my experience, you know, this is not a major, you know, portion of the thing, is that where you even get 3 family practitioners equally well trained with 3 years training, all of them have been up to the table and done normal deliveries. If one of them wants to only do adult and pediatric medicine, it usually stops all deliveries. In other words, the equities of it, of being on every other night for the other 2 besides everything else is, you know, is just too much. So what you got is you got a board-certified internist, faculty level. As I said to the people in the car coming back, you got to realize what a blow that is into Roanoke Rapids, the home of J.P. Stevens, to have 2 Princeton graduates. I mean, the kind of people that could be welcomed into the richest homes there, you know. You're sitting there with, you know, Joe Berry is the son of a surgeon who died when he was 10 years old. You're dealing with you're dealing, and if you want to waste a few more minutes on it to get the flavor of what you saw last week, what was not said to you is mostly political, and what I would say. I agree with everything that was said, okay? What was not said are mostly political things. That nothing you saw is possible without a preceding event. which is the Black Revolution. See, it's like they leave, they don't mean to, but there are several reasons why they leave it out. And these are my biases, if you please. There's no way that could be in place. The most beautiful black women you ever saw in your life serving as receptionists, right, accepted by white people. How could it have happened if the humblest black sharecroppers and tractor drivers hadn't led a revolution and risked, and you didn't meet Melvin Broadnax, the wealthy black farmer, chairman of the board, you see, and had registered their people under Klan threat and violent threats of violence, voted them, and taken power in major offices. So that against that background, you can have black-white unity in a black belt county. This is my view. Without understanding that, which is not, in other words, what is said to you, didn't Bill say it at one point, you're seeing the most integrated institution, right, in this whole area. Wasn't there something like that said? Or was it said privately? Something like that was said, wasn't it? That's the truth. I agree with everything that was said, but it's against the prior historical events. You follow me? If the kids hadn't decided to do at AT&T in 1960 what they did in Greensboro, then you couldn't have this or that blow out later in Greensboro. Everything depended on what precedes it historically. The second thing is vast foundation funding, which I was a part. We dropped $500,000 in there for 4 years. It means there was a richness. If the nurse practitioner didn't see 4 people a day, that was all right. If the doctors didn't see but 11 on certain days getting started, that was all right. Their salaries were paid. There was foundation money for operational deficits for 4 years. Okay? They wouldn't buy nothing of what you saw physically. Remember, he said they had to go out and raise from here, raise from there, and then they raised it mostly from other foundations. There are other things that could be said, but you see how you have to view anything you see, even something, although I agree with Moscone, it was a magnificent, demonstration right on the front lines of the thoughtfulness given to issues. You're seeing an administrator, who's keeping the ledger books, he's doing everything, telling you to change light bulbs when it's small. You do everything. Okay? Any differences? Anyone want to comment? Do you have any thoughts of what you thought you observed?
When Dr. Berry was asked, I think Susan asked him, whether he found any resistance or maintaining the violence or behavior, and he was so positive. He said, I don't know if it all stick with I didn't have the goals, so if it did happen, I wasn't really aware of it. I think there must have been some resistance for black musicians.
Yeah. I think, Garrett, that's as observant a remark as the other one about the idealism. There are very few Joe Berrys in this world, you see, that have somehow learned to count to 10 on everything. Anyone's going to blow up over something, right? There was no blow up, in the Joe Berry response. And that might be another factor for you to understand in establishment responses to that historic practices establishment. What is unsaid, in addition to what I said about the Black Revolution, which they didn't speak about preceding it, there's one more unstated thing. The wealthy people in Roanoke Rapids would know that Joe Berry's sister nominated Ronald Reagan as the Republican convention. You see, everything is very much more complicated than the facts on the table there. You're dealing with a terribly conservative black position, okay? It's a, you talk about ironies inside of dilemmas, inside of conflicts, yeah, this is the real world, you see. This helps to, if you want to be crude about it, it helps to split the establishment. What are they going to do, strike them, Not Joe Berry across the hall. On the other hand, now Joe Berry is Christ-like in turning the other cheek. I mean, that's what you were saying. Had he encountered, did he feel excluded from the country club, He can probably buy and sell the country club, for all I know. I've never tried to measure, ask him his wealth or anything. You got a fascinating situation. He doesn't care. His answer is, I don't play golf. But a lot of black leaders might say, but I have friends who do, and I would use my leverage to open that country up. They don't open. That's the third factor. They do not deal with anything outside of health care.
She did say that he had some concerns about what that meant for the future.
That's right.
The country club and the community might be able.
You're right.
But then you felt that you wouldn't get people over the head with it.
That's right.
Another way to change it.
I think you're
I
right.
think he's really well aware of those issues, and he's doing things like doing the school board and mental health.
Well, that's the biggest thing, isn't it? Could you, as a black man runs the school board, maybe its most intelligent member in making decisions, and think again about the administrator now in regard to what you just said. Describe his personality. Didn't you notice how there wasn't the slightest bit of disagreement that was the line coming from the, white administrator, Remember, he said he turned to a black man who said, sure, you go join the men's club. It's Lily White, remember? You go join the pool. It's Lily White. You know it, okay? You see, it's like they're not going to fight on too many fronts. They're going to keep in place this model. And tactically, the least political of you have to understand how you're forced into politics, by accident. Life is the way we, If it doesn't do it to you tomorrow, it'll do it to you in 10 years, okay? Some of you may think, boy, I'm going to pick up enough courses to get an entry-level position, make my first $18,000 job, move to 28, and then all of a sudden, they'll be sitting there, this first black kid who says, but I want such and such a job, and it's never in your little Mississippi hospital been given to a black. What do you want to do with it? You're in charge of personnel, you're sitting on the revolution suddenly. You follow me? This has happened to people over and over again. Is why exposure, in my mind, to these kinds of issues are so terribly important, both in class here, and that was like a laboratory. That was probably as high a level laboratory to test, what you've learned up to now. You might want to expand on that, but didn't you find, or would you contradict me, that Bill Remus had that precise kind of personality that gelled with that, Suppose he had been a young white activist beyond what he was, never would have worked, 10 years, say Joe's Jr., he instead devoted himself to collections, to community work, to fitting into this pattern that's already been described to us.
I thought it was interesting, too, that story that Jane Taylor told about the reaction of the white patient to the black physician who was going to be working, and how she changed, how the opinions are gradually changing. But that some people still kind of keep over on C.J. Weir or C.J. Weir, and not see her position as a woman, but that gradually is changing.
What about the relations between them? Anyone have the slightest doubt that these were some very unusual kinds of people? Any one of them could have been, let's take the pediatrician we met at Weldon, already been, chairman of the pediatric department. Remember somebody in the group said, why would you have come here? Okay, he decided after 20 years that's what he wanted to do with his life, right? Joe Berry, is there any question, with Princeton and board certified not to do anything with his life, McAdams, McCaleb, anything with it. If there was a weakness, I would have liked him brought in the mid-levels. That would have been the only thing. There's a place we could take you to at New River where they would never think of introducing you to the doctor without giving you time. That's a difference. I was trying to give you differences on a negative side, the difference there is that they would never have functioned without treating the mid-levels as providers to meet and speak separately with guests. You see, so if they wanted, while the doctors were out of the room, to say, but really I'd like to see 20 to 25 a day and not just be the hour-long person for what he wants to spin off to me, you know. The mid-levels have their own issues based on their personalities, their training, you know, what they want to do with life. They want their own practice, you know, and I've found as I go into different places where I, usually as a consultant, I'm given a total freedom to interview everybody separately. The perceptions are entirely different, you see. The doctors may say, oh, the mid-levels are just in love with the place, and the mid-levels are in love with the place, but, you see what I mean? And that may have been one of the places there, you know. Huh? Yeah, they vary, and I'm not trying to, I wasn't meaning to impose my idea of what they might say. I'm saying, depending on who they were, I've seen mid-levels that, you know, greatly pride themselves. For 4 years, they've always seen 20 patients plus a day, and about every third or fourth visit, the patient wants to see the doctor, you know, and that's the way they function. So that they pridefully tell you, you know, the guy that makes the money for this place is me. You know, I produce because I'm the least cost and the highest producer. I'm doing everything he's doing. I'm ordering lab, I'm ordering x-ray, I'm ordering prescription. All that's inside the clinic. What else is outside that clinic? And any of you, you've just seen a clinic. What might another administrator say they're insane about? You're absolutely insane. They're out of their living minds. They're idealists. What's missing? What departments make money? Huh? The pharmacy is outside and private. See, politically astute. They don't compete with, you know. They reach, you know, it's part of their life compromise. They don't rent the place. Probably in states they can't have one because it's on the same premises of another nonprofit that furnishes the whole thing. Another is x-rays. Now that's usually a function of family practice training to be much more guarded in use of x-ray and internists, you know, and so forth. But in a lot of places they would say, no, a double-trained lab x-ray tech, you know, could keep that department not lacking. In other words, they wouldn't be worried about do they have enough foundation money, as he told us, remember, to pull out, that they almost are breaking even. What did he say? They're 85% breaking even or something? They're within a few percentage points of breaking even. So they even could cut their costs or just make it. Anyone want to, on Roanoke Amaranth, add any last words before we leave it? It was a good excursion, and I thank you for raising it under another point before we got started. Anyone on the overall thing I was just indicating, what we were trying to achieve? If you think of it later, we'll go back. What I want to do is now hit a few of these together with you. And this substitute for reading, okay? It's like it was nice. I try to ease up on the ending thing. So you not only didn't have a text to pay for, but you didn't have to read before that trip, and you didn't have to read before this. I figure you got enough to do in the others. I think this headline from Forbes that you probably can read at this distance speaks for itself, okay? I love a headline where a man says something that's so blunt that it ends the debate. There's so much debate inside the School of Public Health. Is so-and-so a liberal? Is he trying to say that, you know, profit-making is evil? I like a man that runs, 60 or 80 hospitals to say it like it is, really come right out. Because in the text of it, really what they've shortened is, what we hire, first of all, he's a CPA with a law degree, president. Very typical, and I'll go over it for you in a few minutes. CPAs with law degrees are prototypical of the American top business type in the U.S. today. They head steel industry, they head auto industries, they head hospitals, okay? That's not true in other nations, but that's become the prototype. being an unpopular character on this campus, I might indicate that the curriculum committees have come very close to accepting this model of the MBA and this combination as the best way to learn healthcare, too. That's being terribly cynical, and you don't want to quote me on it, but some people would say that, okay? That somehow the core curriculum has decided this is the prototype, which is a long way from where a great many major schools are in this field, okay? They get to this extremely belief that, you'll be at a very low-level entry job for a long time with this kind of outlook. Okay? You were going to say something, I thought.
I'm not sure whether I'm agreeing or disagreeing. I think this department, we definitely seeing, looking at it, some good bills. They have the JV trade program over there, and that's becoming real popular. They can study down concentration.
And you know what's happened in the law schools, the idea of taking accounting and a law degree and becoming the tax lawyers who make the most money in the U.S., teaching tax shelters, is, we're getting professions that if you'll look at them coldly, they'd wipe them all out in Japan and Germany. Say, our competitors, you follow me? We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And that's why I have not been at all liberal on this matter. I'm probably a very conservative. The man I agree with most here is Suber, who's at the opposite end of the political spectrum, whom I admire greatly and who keeps telling me, this is what's needed in the school here. Somebody just out of the pure, crude delivery world has been on the battle line, because nobody's been on the battle line here, and I'm glad you're here. But the reasons are totally different. It's that while he teaches fiscal management, he teaches it practically, he is quite aware of it, of the political dangers. You follow me? Of people being out there that cannot cope with change, drastic change as it occurs, because they can only cope with, bottom line stuff and that kind of thing. See, he can teach it, and yet in a good conversation, he's very aware. All right, what this amounts to is, it's a healthcare issue. This is not an invention. Forbes is a superb journal, as a business journal goes. It's sophisticated, it's well-edited, it writes in the King's English. And it's simply saying that what they hire are MBA types who know how to put in major diagnostic income-creating units and how to spin off the tertiary care right to the University Hospital, UCLA. Their central hospital is at the edge of Beverly Hills, and the rest of their hospitals are in an effort to be similarly placed in similar suburbs, okay? That's going to operate in the black. That goes well on the New York Stock Exchange. It's all for the good. That was National Medical Enterprises, and unless you keep up with all the mergers, they could be part of Hospital Corporation of America by this month, The mergers are sometimes beyond me, sometimes I'm right up with them and sometimes I'm not. Do you happen to know whether that West Coast-based one is still separate, or?
Yeah, they're separate.
They're still separate, okay, out there. But they talk once in a while, all of them, I'm sure, it's that big. We went through HMOs, okay? Then I think you need to know from a very recent national journal. That's not a healthcare journal. That's like a Hill journal. It reports what's going on the Hill. Again, HMOs are healthy. What's there? In healthcare, they're an investment opportunity, okay, by Richard S. Schweiger, who just stepped down. I think we've got to, we've been through the HMO thing, try to understand the developments that are happening, okay? Why Carol Cutliff has approached, as she told me several times, a year, about either herself, moving up into one of these, or what would you sell out for? Tell me if these are all, and money is decided, big money, Wall Street money, that there is a great deal of dough in healthcare. They've been fooling around in all kinds of things that are too risky, including the oil business, There's only one outfit that really produces the dollars, and that's cash flow. will help buy a lot of these, right? These are all like the Pentagon, you know. All the generals make their speeches, and then I don't know of any admiral or general, probably under 5% of them don't retire at about age 50 or 55 right into the same companies they've dealt with, you know, and scared Congress into giving more missile money to. Then they become the vice president of missile production. The only question that's ever been in Congress's mind is, did they have the deal before they gave the testimony 3 years ago, or is it a thank you for the testimony? This is a very well-known professor in a March 83 issue commentary. Karen Davis, PhD, she's professor and chair at Johns Hopkins, you know, the Department of Health Services Administration, which is comparable, you know, what you're into here. She's former deputy assistant, you know, secretary of HHS. She's held a lot of things. She simply is pointing out in a very fast summary what the administration proposals are. And if I call it to your attention, it's either because maybe it got caught at the tail end of your last semester courses by people who would have called it to your attention, that, you know, what's being proposed when they use words like restructuring Medicare cost type and sharing is, as she points out, behind that label is a compulsory tax on hospital care for the sick, elderly, and disabled. You know, it's like the opposite of every other Western society, you know, would consider doing. The people who are sick and elderly and disabled are now, under the proposal, 7.5 million of them, be forced to pay as much as $1,530 per person annually, over and above the already burdensome out-of-pocket costs. What's out-of-pocket already? What do we know is out-of-pocket for everybody under Medicare? Shout. You all know the Medicare law by now. What must a person coming under Medicare pay already out of his own pocket? Say in the hospital, what did that pay? The first, well, whatever they state is the cost of the first day, right? Could be now $280, $320, and something, okay? It varies. What on outpatient care do they have to pay? The first deductible, which I forget is maybe $60 or plus dollars, all of that, 100% of that, right? And then 20% of all the charges that are reasonable, usual, and customary. Very tricky words. Might amount to 60% instead of 20%. Why? Suppose the doctor's fee, as in many of these towns, for an adult medicine consultation is $85 for seeing him in his office. And suppose the usual and customary is held by Medicare to be $30, right? They pay him $85, they mail it in, they're going to get back 80% of $30, $24. It costs them a lot more than 20% of what was intended. You see what I mean?
You may not accept assignment exactly.
Well, I'm assuming I gave you an example of not accepting an assignment, yeah. If they accept assignment, then they only pay 20%. And he takes the lumps between the 30 and the 84, see? So in a humane clinic or a humane place, they accept assignments. It means the person, there's a form, they sign over to the doctor a payment of the Medicare 80%. Okay? By doing so, the doctor, by submitting the assignment with his bill, is agreeing to accept 80% of the usual reasonable and customary. Okay? What else do they pay for? What's already burdensome? She says, this is on top of, what's a whole area they have to pay for that's not even covered? Medicare is never covered. And elderly people have oodles of expenses. Huh? Dental. What else? Huh? Drugs. Drugs, very important. You take the over 65, very likely to be under Typically, you go watch people over 65 coming out of an adult medicine office, and if the guy's a low user of drugs, they're carrying 4 to 5 prescriptions. If he's a very good doc and not at all playing games, they might be on 9 to 11 drugs, you know, for all kind of things, for hypertension, for heart disease, for diabetes, you name it, okay, for rheumatism, for sinus, for, you know, everything known to man, asthma. Okay, what can this amount to? The elderly couples, half of them had incomes below $7,000 that were hospitalized. So who are you putting this size tax on? It could add $1,800 in hospital charges and $1,200 in uncovered physician charges, prescription drugs, and other healthcare services. That's a civilized society's proposal. Second one, on Medicaid, affects, a lot of this affects an ambulatory care. Remember, physician charges, prescription drugs, and others. Medicaid, these are people living on welfare checks. The administration proposal is to tax hospital care at the rate of $1 to $2 per day out of a welfare check, and physician visits at the rate of $1 to $1.50 per visit. And all these go under, we always have, you know, words for everything we're doing. This is, what was it called? Medicare, restructuring of Medicare cost sharing, okay?
I might have the latest president's proposals have
The catastrophic stuff.
a lot more budget allowed for
Yeah.
Medicare.
Yeah, I think this was written to indicate the tone. I mean, the tone. You never get 100% of it, but you get a part of it. And I want in a minute read you from a very high-level conservative. Okay. This is from Business Week in February of this year. This is the chairman of the board, chief executive officer of the DuPont Corporation. Thoughtful businessman, very concerned that 10% of the gross national product is being eaten up by, by healthcare, as you all know from your other courses. He's very concerned that only a quarter of a century ago it was 5% in this nation and continues to be at that rate in most, like countries like England is moving between 5 and 6. He's very concerned that the whole medical care delivery system, this is not a liberal in a School of Public Health doctor. This is then there is no bigger in terms of, money making, war connected industry, chemicals, high profits, etc. The medical care delivery system is topsy-turvy. The whole payment system rewards professionals providing more services but provides no rewards for exercising their strength. Things you all have heard, that this is coming from this kind of horse's mouth. Where are the villains in this healthcare scene? It's not medical technology which, properly applied and used by professionals, can reduce costs. Nor is it the poor on public assistance. These big businessmen are not fooled by Reagan's yak, as to where the costs are. Even though Medicaid costs $30 billion in this fiscal year, he's writing in February 1983, it's a special column in Business Week. It's only 11% of all health care costs. That's all the poor, it costs. The unit to be dealt with is a majority group of middle-income people covered by private or governmental health insurance programs where 2/3 of the $300 billion goes. It's like I've heard people, nothing wrong with reading the Wall Street Journal or thinking you're being corrupted by Wall Street. Usually they're reporters, but guys like this tell it straight. They just want to know, where is it, where are the facts, and then we'll make the decisions, And that's why the journalists tend to be, rather excellent. These guys are usually well informed. Remember, medical professionals themselves have found that for most people, most of the time, the benefits of care beyond a certain level taper off rapidly. That doesn't mean that their use of services, their billing tapers off, okay? See, he's putting, remember now as we look at other solutions that business people are proposing, and that you all have probably taken up in other costs, other courses. Again, early in this year, in Business Week, is the case for taxing healthcare premiums. You know that proposal, right? You know the preferred provider thing, okay? Which is not to be put down like some of the others. I want to leap to one of the ones that I think this is March 83 in Business Week. And this one I don't think was out at the time. Some of you may have studied the first PPOs at the courses last year where they brought them in besides HMOs, or maybe you've done them in your own reading. I know I've brought them in without putting a big focus on it. This is the new gimmick, which is more than Capisteria-style fringe benefits. It's the idea of paying employees large lumps of cash not to go to the doctor. Now, this is an important new element in healthcare insurance. And let's get straight how one of the big institutes advising business companies in this area, quote, employees just do not have a sense of the cost of medical care, says William E. Dunley. They spend like there's an American Express card in the sky. Okay, we're at one of the biggest experiments for putting cash back in the hands of people. You see, the picture shows the a box of apples called Employee Healthcare Savings, and it shows these $100 bills, groups of them. See inside the apple being handed out, and you'll see how much can be handed out. This is in effect already, and you'll see how far this is from the wisdom of where they thought it was. You're putting the burden where? Not on the professional, where he says, the abuse is coming from. You're going to see in a minute, it's the idea that the overuse is, and the whole burden is to be shifted. This again, not now to the elderly, but to the employees under group health insurance. Blue Shield, these are not small outfits. Blue Shield of California and the Hartford Foundation are financing experiments with a number of employers to refund $300 to $500 in a lump sum for each of their first groups of 4,000 company and government employees using county units and some companies. Some of you have you studied this anywhere, or you realize this is a big development as a way to get control of costs? So after the employee pays his deductible of $100 or $250, all medical claims are paid out of his fund with his name on it, family head's name, until it's exhausted. Then out of general insurance coverage. If he has not used up his fund by the end of the program year, he gets out of his box everything left in it. See, they keep in boxes. Now, two critics of it quoted. The first, big business would dispose of immediately. It's Ignagne, the assistant director of the AFL-CIO Social Security Department. But we'll deal with the business critic in a minute. They don't object to the cash incentives, but she worries that in some cases it may discourage the use of low-cost items such as office visits, diagnostic and preventive services, so you keep the box heavy in cash. And people will not use them, services, until they're really sick. I think every one of you, that's what you've learned here if you've learned nothing else, okay? When they don't use health care initially, trivial conditions become serious. The rest of it's usual dribble, we know. But more importantly is the next guy, the senior consultant in benefits design for John Hancock Insurance Company. What you're doing, he's saying, and he's now listened to by a lot of employers. What you're doing is paying cold cash to that body of workers who each year are totally healthy and do not use their health care benefits. Okay, he's warning them the consequences of such a policy. It looks short-term like a solution, right, to cut costs of health care for an employer. Next big business consultant, David Duerr, senior consultant with a Princeton management company that only advises management. Such a plan doesn't get to the core issue at all, which is that the providers of health care are calling all the shots. See, it's like acting like the poor devils. You see, the patients are calling the shots, opening. Remember, we talked about the gatekeeper is the physician. You know, if the gatekeeper wants to make money and puts them to bed and all, he can just blow the whole system open, okay? They don't want to make decisions in that. Now, the reply to that is coming from a guy named Spohn, Senior Vice President at Chemical Bank in New York, with the company which is using it. He says he agrees with the last critic, he called it, that the doctors, are to blame. We can't get out. And what we've been able to do is a more practical solution, since we can't. Remember, the banks, don't want to offend doctors who make big loans. Insurance companies don't want to offend them, and no one wants to offend them. But the more practical solution then becomes the educator or the user, who is our employee, a better level of understanding the employee about how to use it. And I don't want to underestimate this. I want to just say that if that's the major thrust, it's an error. I don't think anyone sitting at this table would deny that the more you could educate people, away from smoking, away from, the things they do to destroy their own health, that's tremendous. They're not talking about health education here, okay? On do-it-yourself stuff. They're talking about other things. The second thing is there is a pressure they put on doctors, okay? And they're trying to, get that pressure off. So Chemical is quite pleased. It's deposited $300 for every one of its 20,000 employees in a new thing called employee spending accounts, and allow them to, it's a very complicated formula. The net effect is that very cleverly they can end up putting their money back into Chemical Bank money market accounts or into their tax-free municipal bond accounts. It's fascinating when a bank loves these things, because what they're doing is holding on to the cash in a special account instead of giving it to an insurance company, making money, and then giving the workers only two choices of jumping out at the year end. You see, they don't draw it out in cash, they deposit it into one of two different kinds of things. I think these are not so far. I don't think I'm not going into the whole thing, but there are companies, it goes on the next page, who describes Pennsylvania who issue lottery tickets. They'll issue anything to people who save a little on medical care costs for them. These are incentives with all of this, okay? Again, they quote, John Hancock's Turl, that employees may want it badly enough to pay more attention to the calendar than to their symptoms. Some employees would postpone until January treatment needed in December in order to collect their cash incentive bonus for the previous year. Say if it's ending in a calendar year, which could have consequences for, follow-up there.
I think when he's talking about the digital welfare or the oral, it's like the movies, the service care, what we put on, they're automatically taxed.
Yeah. Well, and if there's one thing I hope you've learned is, where the dollars are, we've been back over it. 40%, all the dollars are in hospital care, right? It's not the physician's 21% that's the key to it. So he's the gatekeeper, for that whole area, right? And every time they try to get a hold of it, even with these diagnosis-related groups, there are commentators who point out it's like trying to squeeze in a big punching bag that's breaking loose at a number of points. You squeeze it in here and patch it, it breaks out over here. I gave you early on maybe a page or two out of this new little pamphlet put out by Physicians Forum on a salaried position, and would recommend if it's in the library you glance at it only because its thesis is so strange and new, and some people have challenged it, which is that the majority of doctors they're claiming are already salaried in one way or another. I told you I have my own critique of that they've accepted their own statements about what they are. So if 9 very wealthy orthopods, in reply to the questionnaire, say they are salaried because they draw down $50,000 apiece, they're really the owners of the business and draw down the balance as, at will during the year as the profits, show up. But yet they're listed in this kind of study this way. Yeah, okay. It's full of others that are very significant, including that the AMA did not begin as an ideological organization. It began as an organization that suited the needs of the majority of doctors as a trade organization about 60 or 80 years ago, who were general practitioners. It suited their bread and butter needs. It gave them a guild, it gave them the power politically, and that what's going to be needed for this era, if that was really a trade union in disguise, will be one for doctors, to meet this new era in which they're going to be forced into, these 9-to-9 things and into all the things that this book is describing. I don't know him, but it says he's a medical and public health student here by the name of Mark Smith. They quote him for a couple of pages, along with a whole series of distinguished national figures. So they called in some medical students, obviously. I wanted to share a sort of smorgasbord, because that's probably my weakness as well, as you know, that I've given you, if I haven't given you a text, a smorgasbord of current events as readings to be sure you were current on things, and covered a range of issues. And I promised to end early, so you stay on for the and do the evaluation. I want to close by a couple of very general things to remind you again that a recent poll of corporate executives, so this is not where you would be coming from, 1 out of 3 believe that most top managers in charge do not know their industry, do not know the technology of their industry, and cannot push for innovation. One of the people then commenting on the poll, who teaches business administration at the University of California, asked why it is that the nations with the most developed systems of professional management education, that's the U.S. and England, perform so poorly against 2 nations that provide almost no professional management training, Germany and Japan. They've both been outstanding successes in this period. Now, we know that these are complex questions. They're new equipment furnished by, their former vanquisher in World War II and all those reasons, okay, and that they're more in proximity to the enemy in Soviet Russia and all the reasons why we, gave them new plants against our old plants, okay? It's very complex, but it's something for you to ponder. I hope, as some of you finish your education, you ponder what you would like to see in education, because I simply, without being at all theoretical, I have no basis, I haven't taken your courses, believe that the more fluid you are, the more flexible you are to deal with change, the more valuable you are to management. That you do need an entry-level job. You do need to have, but to get to a position of dealing with change, you've got to understand it, and the reasons. In other words, you would think that generalized training, would do it. It won't do it because it's technically oriented. In other words, and to the extent that that's happened in my book, in health administration, to that extent, students can't turn the world upside down, but a tremendous weakness has come in here, okay? And in that, there's nothing wrong with, I hope, being a dissenter, you know. That to the extent that this program in 1983, right in the school you're in, each day on the bulletin board that I've been here for 6 months appear more notices of hospital residencies at a point when Michigan and Harvard and Yale take them down and only put up ambulatory ones, you know, is a warning, you know, of what world you're living in, okay? This isn't where the action of the future is, okay? Anybody who wants a hospital administration, you know, administrator has got them. They pour them out of Minnesota, they pour them out of Michigan, they pour them out of Duke, you know. They really know how to run dietary, housekeeping, and Minnesota is noted. When a Minnesota administrator arrives, I can tell when I enter his hospital. The vinyl tile floors shine. They teach them one thing. I'm telling you, the vinyl tile floors shine in the Minnesota Administrators Hospital. And you know no board's going to put up with a slob. UNC who's just, you know, been out in field training somewhere, you know. I mean, when they want a shiny floor, don't you see and I'm simply making I've sometimes tried to provoke you just to get a point across. Historically, you've got to understand, the whole world's screaming, cut those costs. Get rid of those Holiday Inns, right? Get them the devil out of bed. Get them out of here. And at this point in history, it's like an achievement, you know. It's like from the 17th century arrives a new drive. Send them in the hospitals, you know. Well, God bless you, okay, and the class behind you and the one behind that. I will be a dissenter on this, that having been there, the action is anywhere but there, okay? And read Congress, I mean, they're going to go in for hospice care. They're going to the edge of everything, okay, to keep them out of bed. Just use your heads. You get to the point where you can ought to use your heads. Point one. Point two. If what we're seeing is a shift from an industrial economy in this nation to high technology services, information systems, if that's what's being said, and you know it is around you all the time, okay, where the jobs are, then what are we always doing in this country? We're looking for a magic pill that'll let us eat our gut to the fill at Jordan Charolais or at Wendy's or wherever and still not gain weight. In America, we always want a magic pill to solve all that. We want to burn all the gasoline, drive all the place we want to do and not pollute the air. We want to live as immoderately as we please, doing anything we want to do and not come down with either cancer or heart disease. Because technology is, we think, is always on the verge of freeing us from personal discipline and responsibility, which it never does and it never will. What's that got to do with being an administrator? The more high technology comes in around us, the more the need is for the human touch. Don't you forget. In other words, the courses, there'll be people that'll tell you in accounting, you got a good computer there, it makes it all easier. That's right, it makes it easier for an accountant. It can make it more impersonal for everybody else. And the more then that it takes over functions that used to be basic education, like arithmetic or spelling and word processors, all the technology that's coming in, the more you're going to have to take on responsibilities for values. These are value judgments that we've been dealing with here. And that isn't because I'm a philosopher, okay? I'm least of all that. It's that you're making value judgments. So I want to, in closing, express my appreciation to all of you as a class, individually and collectively, because this was my first time on this. So you were dealing not with somebody with a outline or for I didn't steal, I publicly stated I gave you Dr. Rosenfeld's reading list. And I especially appreciated the times you questioned, but not so much me as the questions almost all of you raised with the outside experts as they came in. I think they stirred you, and that there was more of an exchange at different times, whether it was HMOs or rural practice of the different, all the kinds of people we have, the federal era. And my goal was to goad you, probably provoke you, for which I don't apologize at all, and to make you think through your values, because your future lies ahead of you to make these decisions. And while you have to think about taking exams, and you have to think about, all the things that are so horrible in the end of April and May on a beautiful sunny day like this, you are also going to go into administration in some form or other. And hopefully you've gained some idea whether you're serving even a hospital or an establishment agency of the importance of ambulatory care and these group practice issues and handling physicians, the kinds of things we've dealt with here. If you're in that other area, then we've tried to, deal with it. But that was the goal, and if you're any better off, it's less the organization of the course or any skills of mine as much as the exchanges we have here. And I thank you for them, because I needed to have the experience, and I needed the experience of being with a class that was responsive. And you were out of many walks of life, so there wasn't exchange here. We had all levels of health administration people, JDs, family nurse practitioners and masters in nursing, and PhDs in political science, and I may have overlooked some more. We had a Canadian observer from at least one master's degree, so those are going for 5, yeah. But I wanted to thank you again before I leave you with the student who's going to handle the evaluations. And I hope that if you have constructive things, anything destructive, fine. I mean, anything, wallop away in any way you like. It's your baby. What I'm talking about is if there are ways in which you would think you would like to see more of certain things, if it was done again, I'd like to know what those are. And if there are ways in which it could be improved if it was done next year, which I won't know until further discussions take place. I want to thank you again for the experience of coming over to the School of Public Health and having a chance to teach this course and to be with all of you. Are there any papers, sort of last call, that, okay. I may be trying to count fast. I may be still short. Would you put it in my mailbox or give it to one of the people in that main office? Will there be time to do that? You can leave it here and I pick it up here, or you can deliver it to Wing D, to the office there where I have mail to. Yeah. The old nurse's dorm, the far end, 3rd floor. I have a so-called office with 3 of us share a closet. No window, no air conditioning. Oh yeah, I'm at the same hall where the dean of the School of Public Health has evicted 5 people to have a hideaway here.
Will we get the papers back?
Yeah, I will return the papers with comments. When? Where? Did you all not give me appropriate addresses? Because I better write them down right now. Okay. I know I had, does everybody continue to have a drawer here through May 6th or whatever, that'll be 9th, whatever, Some of you are leaving, huh?
Till May 15th.
Yeah, well, I might take till then, but I'm going to try to get on them and get them out since I think Someone's delivering them, one of them should be in the box this evening, and then there's another one. This may be all, but I've got to look around in terms of, if I'm missing anything, okay? Who is missing from this Proctor? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a missing soul. Oh, Keith. That's right, okay. I got another message from him. I've been calling him, so I can't tell if the number's the same as the infirmary, because the last time I talked to him, he was there, and obviously was not able to get the class or put time in the paper. Any last words of wisdom for an inexperienced teacher?
I was able to use some of the material that they were in my lectures and it feels
Well, that's good to hear. Okay, good luck to you. Amy Cohen. Oh, address. Why don't, if there's a special place besides your drawers in the building, like in nursing, is there a place you'd like them mailed you out? Or if you have a nursing box, I'll deliver it, Will you maintain those boxes through up to May 15, something like that? Just in case the May 6th or 9th mail gets delayed. I have 5 people I think I can drop off in this building.
Would it be possible for me to Xerox that copy of the box?
Of which are you pointing? Of this?
No, the 18 month.
Sure. Yeah, this, you want a Xerox one? Yeah. You want the article or this? That one? The Schweiker article,
And
sure.
then the one after that.
I have enough extra copies if you all want to see. Would any of you be interested? I was going to use them in med school, but I'll share. Did I give this to you, the tax on, Karen Davis's belief that it's a tax on the elderly? On the back of it is, you remember that Mobile hospital that shut down? This explains the reasons. I don't know if I gave you that. You remember they shut down their ER, the first huge hospital shut down the ER because of the heavy load of uninsured patients. Let me give you that. It might be useful to you. The last of the non-textbook giveaways.
It's the one from Business News.
You want that one to copy? Okay, I need those back because I use them in a portion of med school stuff, so be sure to get them back to me in the mail. This is the chairman of DuPont. So. That's the one? Yeah, I'll be, maybe you're all going to be in an evaluation. Stay here for evaluation, if you will. And Ms. McAllister, you're perfectly at liberty to stay and proceed. Thank you. Yeah. No one had anything else to add? Okay.